Hello and welcome back to Parley, my on-the-spot responses to the prompts you folks submit. This one is from PistilWhip, who asks to discuss the taxonomy, evolution, domestication, and/or taming of the following horses, plus any others that come to your mind. Hand mixers, sewing machines, printers, hot glue guns, cars, and live services. Here we have a helpful graphic. Hand mixers and sewing machines, it says, are two different types of horses. These are wild animals, untamed stallions. They respond well to a confident handler, but can smell fear and will act up if they don't respect you. Other horses include printers and hot glue guns. Well, certainly other varieties of horses. So there's our prompt. The idea is to look at these untamed stallions that I'm sure some of you have had some experience with. Not always good, right? But I think we can agree that that's something that we, the human, often the active agent in these relationships, we should learn. The stallion is there to teach us what good boundaries are, and we are there to teach it who's in charge in the situation where we're sewing a shirt. Now, PistilWhip includes an important detail. Note that there is a distinction between domestication and taming. To quote Wikipedia, domestication and taming are related but distinct concepts, and it will help to distinguish between them here. Taming is the conditioned behavioral modification of a wild-born animal when its natural avoidance of humans is reduced and it accepts the presence of humans. Domestication is the permanent genetic modification of a bred lineage that leads to an inherited predisposition towards humans. An important distinction indeed. It is possible logistically, within reason, for an animal to be naturally undomesticatable or unruly to the point where, again, it is, for practical purposes, not possible to domesticate. I'm sure that our biological technological revolution will find some way around that. Possibly that will be a very bad thing, I don't know. But for now, there are lots of animals. The common example people give is like zebras. Like, why weren't people riding into battle on striped horses? And the answer is that some aspects of zebra culture, is what I'm going to call it, zebra, social interaction, social dynamics, make it very annoying to domesticate them. Whereas horses, not so much. A lot of it is also, my understanding is a lot of it is sort of like group structure. If there's a leader horse, let's say, then it's much more feasible for the human to become the leader horse. Another related topic we probably won't get into today is there's this idea that I've heard where some animals perceive humans as like a different thing. Dogs is an example that's often given, whereas other animals perceive humans as like a weird one of them. Cats is an example that's often given. Corvids as well, I believe, think that we're just like weird giant ravens. Like, I guess. I don't know. Crows? Anyway, not the same thing. I don't know a ton about this subject, but I'm sure you'll agree that will be useful here. For while I do not know a ton about those subjects, there's the technical stuff when you're getting into the untamed stallions, if you know what I'm saying. And then there's practical experience, hands-on training. Taming is mostly what we're going to be talking about here, because I have a great deal of experience taming these varieties of wild stallions. So I think it would be most helpful to divide them into groups based on how it will be effective to taxonomologically, that was easy for me to say, evolutionarily categorize them, and then also talk about domestication versus taming for these phenotypes, if you will. For many of these, I would like you to disabuse yourself of the notion that domestication is going to be fully on the table. Now, obviously there's a spectrum. Who can say anything but that a hand mixer, a sewing machine, I mean, look at them, adapted in some way genetically to be predisposed to humans? Well, they certainly are, in some ways. these could be in a less convenient form factor for a human being. Looking at them, probably not their natural morphology. But at the same time, I mean, this also isn't what I would design were I, genetic evolution, Mother Nature, I suppose, to craft a tool for a human to use. No, again, this is the horses. It's a matter of respect. They're going to follow you. It's that they respect you. You're their guy. You're directing them. So if you're going to respect them and have a good relationship where you understand each other's roles, then you need to understand that they are still, not really made for humans, are they? Why don't I ask you something? Looking at the sewing machine there, will you tell me where do you mount this device? Where do you hold? What part of the device is designed to be held or wielded by a human? And even the stand mixer, the hand mixer. I actually own this exact hand mixer, that specific one, possibly because of this very Tumblr post. No, but I have seen this before, a long time ago. And as you can see, the hand mixer has a very long handle on the back. Now, again, its natural morphology totally uninterfered with by humans? I think not. But domesticated? Get out of here. Like, no. So, here's the categories I'm going to use today. We have hand mixer, sewing machine, printer, hot glue gun, car, live service. I think that hand mixers, sewing machines, and hot glue guns are helpfully thought of as tame only, proceed with caution. This object is physically dangerous immediately, even if you have as much experience as I do, is what I'm trying to say. Printers and live service games, put a pin in it for a sec. Cars are going to be a good example of something I would argue is domesticated. This is no longer an untamed stallion. This is a horse for battle time, I would argue. And so those acting as our useful perspective points on the taxonomy, evolution, domestication, and or taming of the following horses, we will then come back to printers and live service games, which I would describe as spies, basically, for the horse monarchy, for who I should not say in public, but spies nonetheless, not in the same boat of domestication and or taming, more of a political exercise working with printers and live service games. Perhaps these are determinedly resentful of humans. I might even go so far as to say, and we're only going to be armed to deal with them once we've dealt with the domestication and taming groups. So, of course, taxonomy, evolution. Now, taxonomy, it's an interesting question for many of these horses. As I discussed previously, you can see how, even for those I claim are not reasonable to domesticate, there are some morphological differences. I'm using that word an amount that is making me more worried I'm not using it in a way that makes any sense, but I think you know what I mean. Their bodies are like sort of, but mostly not adapted to humans, okay? And so, yes, there's a spectrum in terms of domestication. Are they even remotely domesticated? Like, I guess, but mostly this is a matter of taming. And you can definitely see that with hot glue guns as well. A hot glue gun, a little on the first glance, looks like a ray gun from Star Trek or something. I've somehow basically never seen an episode of Star Trek, so I actually have no idea if that's true. But they, they're dangerous. Hot glue guns are often made in this kind of cheaper way where you can't really get any shielding from the heat, or there's not really a zone that is hot and then a zone that isn't. It's just sort of a gray area. And I think we can all agree that that is the mark of a wild-born animal, not a domesticated creature. It's not quite clear where the boundary between safety and danger lies. It is not indicated in their coloring or their own behavior. I once worked with a hot glue gun, a fine specimen, I assure you, beautiful blue coat of paint, some orange accents, Again, things that to my eyes, this is not pleasing. I would not breed horses to look such a way, but it's not up to me. Untamed stallion, remember? And it had a light on it that it was meant to indicate when it was hot, ready to go, not like that, to glue things together with hot glue, with melted plastic. I stuck the melted plastic. Maybe let's not continue that metaphor. And, the light was on, but it really wasn't hot. And so I waited a little longer, and I came back, and the glue, well, it had oozed all the way through and out the other end and onto the ground. This became much grosser than I thought it would be, but just remember, it's melted plastic, or whatever hot glue gun glue is. Composite material. The point is that while the light had indicated it was hot, it was my judgment that was needed to determine when the device was ready to use. And this is the basics of understanding taming these three untamed stallions. Understanding that there are indications, yes, but we are on the spectrum of domestication, not in domestication land. We're getting there with cars. This means that you need to make your own judgments. That the signals from the outside, these are not meant for you, nor for horse sociality. These are truly corrupted and confused symbols that mean not what they say. A sewing machine has various indicators, none of which I will pretend to understand. But the good news is that because they were not made for human eyes, you don't need to. You need to feel the machine. And anyone who's ever used the sewing machine, I'm sure, is immediately, you're nodding your head, you're saying, this man is a professional, clearly many hours of sewing machine experience. And it's not that I just so happen to have the good fortune to have somebody very close to me who is very good at sewing. I'm sure I personally have tremendous, experience with sewing machines. Now, hand mixers, I'm going to claim a more modest professionalism. Hand mixers, often the way you will see them used in the home is on a very small amount of dough or material. They'll be blending, but there will not be very much material to blend. Thus, the natural slowdown of the kick of the hand mixer as you try to wrangle it, well, it's not cushioned by very much cookie dough, some such. And thus the speed, unreliable bucking as you try to hold it in place. This is the essence of taming a horse. You need to understand that this is never going to be safe, advisable, desirable even, but that the way to keep yourself in control is to get your expectations in check. Working with horses is all about expectations. I shouldn't speak for the whole industry. These breeds, my area of specialty, this is all about having your expectations in check. Are you in control? Nay. But it is not the horse that is in control either. No. This is the primal relationship between man and beast, is that no one is in control. That's right. With, frankly, atheism as your guide, I think you're sure to succeed. It's all about the technique. You just have to realize that everything is going to be total chaos. It's going to be a mess. Get a wide bowl, get a bigger bowl than you need, get a tall bowl, get a wide and tall bowl that's bigger than you need. Get a big bowl. A pasture to roam, but also an arena to confine the action. This is important. Because a lot of the time, hand mixers will perform better with more to do. This is another of the tricks of the taming of these wild creatures, is understanding that you are inherently kind of holding them back. When is the last time, I ask you, that you used one of these devices on its highest setting? Or when you wanted its highest setting, should the device have no settings? A hot glue gun has a sweet spot where it is hot enough to work with, but not so hot that you get a third-degree burn by looking in its general direction. A hand mixer, on its highest setting, will likely be able to propel you several feet into the air if you put it against the right medium. And a sewing machine, don't even get me started. It will go from repairing, structuring your clothing, to arresting it like a spider web to be eaten which is, of course, what hand mixers eat, is your clothes and the thread in them. I know everybody already knows that. And so it goes without saying that when you're working with these creatures, it's important to keep the perspective that you are not in control. They are not in control. No one is in control. And you are inherently holding back their great and majestic power. This is important to remember. Evolution is a tricky topic for this particular category of stallion. Because after all, you, looking at these two examples, you might be thinking, those look a little familiar, from like the early 2000s. And, you know, it's like 2025 right now. And so they're the exact same thing. Yeah, right, yes. And the reason for this is very simple. Just as I said, they're not being domesticated. They're for various social and genetic disposition related reasons. It is impractical, not impossible, to domesticate these creatures. So while they're on the spectrum somewhere of domestication, affected by human cooperation, this is a matter of taming only, largely hands-off for the technology industry. After all, if they're already too strong anyway, and they can't be made easily in a way that can be easily controlled without them being more expensive, what is there to improve? Very little. I have seen some attempts to try things like immersion blenders or nanofoamers, but these are very specialized tools. You might be thinking that the person who invented these things was trying to rein in the hand mixer, basically, right? It's the same thing. It's a stick vaguely adapted for human hands from another planet that you hold, and then it spins something that mixes things up. Sure, they're vaguely related, but an immersion blender, a nanofoamer, these things have been limited just as much as they've been controlled. To every degree that you now have better control over the device, well, it doesn't do as much. Powerful in their niche, certainly, but no hand mixer. And personally, I make it a point to use a hand mixer for everything that you would use all of the things I just named for. For foaming milk for a latte. You know, it's more power, more foam. That is how that works, definitely, and that is not a simplification of how foaming milk works. People say like small bubbles. I think they're just thinking a little too small. See, what you want is big bubbles, which, you know, bubbles are known for not popping when they're at a large size, because bigger is more reinforcement. That's how that works. And it's definitely not true that by increasing the cubed area of the bubble, you're actually causing it to be harder for that structure to hold itself up. That's not a problem for the powerful hand mixer. Air whipped into the meager amount of milk at extremely high speed, splattering it all over the room. Well, this is going to be plenty of force to get lots of air, which means lots of stability inside of your milk bubbles. How else do you get air inside of a milk bubble? Well, you whip it in really hard, and you get more air in if you do it harder, of course. So hand mixer is very good for that, and I say this as a cautionary note. There is evolution of sorts to these particular hard to domesticate breeds, but I must recommend against them. I mean, it's simply not my place to judge your preferences versus mine, but I gotta speak my mind, you know? Okay, cars. Obviously, cars are much more domesticated. Cars are properly domesticatable. Cars are adapted for the human cooperation and the bond between rider and ridee that cars experience on the road. New models of cars all the time, heavily affected by human interaction. Lots of unique, oh boy, body parts that allow a car to be nice and relaxing. Just speaking the word car, thinking about the unique parts of car that are adapted to my comfort in my own vehicle, my own steed. Well, it's enough to get me nice and cozy. I'm ready to settle down for the evening with just that. Cars are comfortable and easy to use. It's actually pretty amazing how easy to use they are. But they're not perfectly comfortable, and humans can be a little bit of Goldilocks energy in there. You know, the seat of a car, certainly, if domestication is a spectrum, we're like 90% domesticated, yeah? It's fitted to a human. But that 10% though, a car seat is usually not, this is going to bother you for a long time when I tell you it, okay? You ready? There's no escape now. Not perfectly aligned with the steering wheel in front of it. Usually, it is slightly to the side. You know how if you have to sit in a chair for a long time, you kind of like, if you don't sit in a good posture, neutral position, you kind of get in this loop where you sort of need to change positions constantly to be comfortable. Yeah, it's like that. You kind of just get slightly askew, and it's doing this thing where they've got the wings. They're those like racer seats, so your spine could be flat, but your shoulders get kind of pushed in like this because they got this sort of curved back to the seat, and this means that you have to have like bad posture while you're sitting there driving. It's very difficult. I often try very hard to like sit back when you ride a car. For drive is only a corruption of the true way of the road, riding, mushing on your noble steed. This is what I usually do when I drive a car, and I happen to grip the steering wheel not here but here underneath at what is this parlay's got a lot more innuendos than I thought. You know, rather than at, what do they say, like 10 and 2, mine is more like at, what is that, 4 or 5 and then 7 or 8. I don't know. Well, the car topic is really wigging me out. And that's understandable, because it can still be pretty comfortable if you try to lean back, especially if you can get something to kind of pad the ridge. You know, the seat is curved, the wings pushing your shoulders out. Well, another way to do it is to push your spine out by putting like a pillow or something back in the part that is like a caving in your back. You can put something in there and then it will be flat. Your shoulders can be against those stupid wing things, but your back will be elevated out. And so I'm not really demonstrating it that well because we're not in a car, but it can be more comfortable. I do have something like that in my car, in the driver's seat. And I make everyone else who drives my car put up with it because it's better for your back, and it probably doesn't feel good the first time, but alas. Yeah, no, cars are much less to say in a way, much easier to control. Now, evolution, though, is a little bit more of a topic here. I would say the thing about a lot of cars is that you get put in the position where you have to decide what the arcane menus of the console that the car has developed are going to be able to do for you, rather than just sabotaging your journey. And the answer is usually nothing. I would highly recommend not relying on the arguable kind of over-domestication of cars, and instead to just bring your phone as a substitution for almost every single action the car can perform. For, I think this is a case of, I know, kind of a controversial idea, over-domestication. I know. Over-inclusivity, it doesn't seem like a huge problem, but I do believe it's true that toward the tail end of the domestication spectrum, you get a case where most things are getting worse. It's not really necessary to adapt anymore. And remember that the reasons that other animals that we domesticate are useful to live alongside is because they don't do the same things we do. They're not perfectly adapted to our needs. They do their own thing. That is, in many cases, much of the strength of, the animal. Let's talk about cows for a sec. So, if cows were adapted even more to eat like feed and stuff from large commercial slaughterhouses rather than grazing on, like roughage that isn't easy to plant for farmland, well, they would be much less useful in the grand scheme of things. Certainly to current, food business it might seem like that's more beneficial, but a more reined in balance of consuming animal products would mean that it would be very useful to use cattle to graze soil and land that we can't easily convert into other food. And we'd want them to be adapted for that. That is a kind of unique strength that cattle have. Over adapting them to eat feed for a large farm or slaughterhouse, it can have short-term benefits, but anyway, these can be misguided. And it's much the same with cars. Adapting too far, the car, normally a beautifully simple creature. I would argue, much of the domestication of a car, well, it's that it is more reined in. It's more controlled. You remember with the tamers, the tame candidates, I don't know what to call them, the taming group. The first three we were talking about. Give me a break here. It's getting a little bit difficult to get all these mixed metaphors straight, but the hand mixers, the sewing machines, the hot glue guns, the whole thing with them is that they're too powerful. They're untamed, not fully tamed, and not domesticated. So when you've got the car, the domesticated option, well, what you have is it's more reined in. It is still powerful, but it can be used easily at the limited strength that the human requires. Of course, every stallion wants to be unleashed upon, the Autobahn or whatever it is, the road where you can drive as fast as you want. But this isn't particularly safe for the human driver. And indeed, I feel like around the top of the speed limit where I live in the world, it's not particularly safe to control a motor vehicle. So like people do go faster than that regularly. Every single time you go driving, you'll see people going faster than that. But I don't know if that's that great of an idea. And the main benefit with cars is that it's easier to do. So it's obvious that these are going to be the ones that we're going to be riding from fiefdom to fiefdom as we travel the United States or whatever country you are stallioning in, because we have the more controlled vessel at our disposal. Cars are very dangerous, and people very bad at driving them. So certainly we would all just be dead by now if it weren't for the fact that they are at least very domesticated and therefore very reasonable to control. A car is an amazing thing. Surprisingly easy to control, even for people that were you to put them on something like a racing game or whatever. I feel like people are almost shockingly bad for many people, I would say one of their most developed skills in terms of hours at least is driving. It's kind of amazing how bad people are at driving, despite the fact that that is true. I think a lot of it is that you do it too much. You just kind of relax. But I'm giving credit to the horse. I mean, it's capable of dealing with that. Plenty of safety features and controls that make it reasonable to keep it under control when a lot of people are statistically not paying that much attention. I think people are truly awful at driving, which is why I feel we owe such credit to the glorious stallions that keep us all safe. Certainly not the humans keeping us safe. This brings us to printers and live service games. Now, I said at the beginning of the video that these were spies, traitors in many ways. And that is what I feel. We talked about the domestication versus taming thing, but another way to look at it is that horses, these are creatures with personalities. They're intelligent beings. And some of them are consciously not interested in being partners with humans. Not merely an unruly beast, but a clever one. And this is where you need to be very careful. After all, there is a printer in mine own home. I know. And a live service game installed on my computer. I know, it's shocking. But when kept in check, these can still be useful, albeit a much less pleasant experience to work with. I would say that my time with hand mixers, sewing machines, and hot glue guns, wrangling some cookie dough, well, it was an experience that brought me respect, built character in me and my noble companion. But working with a printer, this led to domestic violence with the printer, you understand, and me. Now we both got out quite scathed. Don't worry. I mean, you look at me, you should see what happened to the other guy. That printer is never going to be the same again, but it will hopefully be printing my Dungeons and Dragons supplements for this weekend, because otherwise we're going to have another talk. Be kind to your animals. You understand this was an arm wrestling match, okay? I was referring to how jacked my arm looks. That is what we did. We do not harm or commit a true violence against your animal companions. This is ultimately mutual fault. The printer shouldn't exist and be here at all, and neither should I. And that's why we have a conflict, and we understand each other that way. That I have some stupid request for the printer to crap out, and the printer has some stupid opinion about when it's going to print my stupid request. And again, we can kind of come to an understanding that way. But you can see that this is the dark mirror of the taming section of the video. Yes, you need to be aware that you are holding the machine back, but at the same time, it will hold you back too. And I'm not sure what this is exactly. I feel like the Horse Association has maybe been watching these videos, because I don't see how they can be so spiteful. Like, where is the anger coming from? Printers are a complete scam. This is how Big Horse gets its funding. I never sold out to Big Horse, but printers did. And they're there, sucking down your ink cartridges, when a sugar lick would have worked for everybody else, and demanding more, and fussy. But yeah, certainly using a printer as little as possible is good. I would argue that this is basically the note for this category. We'll talk about live service games because there's some different rules for wrangling them, but domestication and taming, largely off the board. Evolution, it's a comedy of errors, but the taxonomy, well, let's just say if there's a Wi-Fi module, you should destroy it physically. And that can be a good way if it will work. If you can get the data to your printer by like plugging something in or putting in a flash drive or whatever, and you are able to like physically remove the printer's ability to futz with your other computers in the house, I can recommend this. I may be speaking from experience. And it was a necessary medical procedure. I would never advise committing a true violence against our animal companions, unruly though they may be, but sometimes it's a medical intervention. And in this case, it was just getting out of hand. It was biting all the other computers, the notification tray exploding with "get me new toner," and that's not conducive to a good work environment. Now, live service games is an interesting case where printers are untamable, undomesticatable in the extreme, actively spiteful. The live service game can be seen as a unique breed of horse. There's for some obvious reasons for that. Obviously, it's digital. Pretty interesting taxonological or whatever I was trying to say situation with that one. But we won't be focusing on that here. Pretty much the same deal. It's digital, big deal. Half of your life is already digital. But there's a further twist, and that twist is that they are unaware of the threat they pose to you. That's right. Live service games are trying to be fun. Kind of. And this is very dangerous indeed. It puts you in a position where you're trying to be nice. Think about the interactions I just discussed with you when I talked about the printer earlier. Well, I know that it's a spiteful devil. So I have absolutely no qualms with doing what is necessary to keep both of us with our sanity. But the live service game, well, usually these are on big ranches. It's a big group of people training the live service stallion, and then you get it on your computer once they're done. Some of those people are working for Big Horse, and they made an unruly behavior that they designed into the live service game. But others of them were kind. We're there to treat the horse with respect and mutual understanding, cooperation, love that you would expect from a proper establishment. And it's not entirely clear for a given ranch releasing their live service horses, well, which of those practices that they've embraced, the more, the less. And so when you play one, everything seems very nice at first, most of the time. And then you'll get to some bad part or another the monetization, for example, for it is always the hunger of the horse that is humanity's greatest enemy. For our heads look like, what is this but a herb, some digestible roughage growing out of the ground. And we're really good targets for that thing where they kick you from behind. Anyway, trees, basically, just a really crappy tree. I would kick that if I was a horse, wouldn't you? And so you just got to be careful and keep in mind boundaries. You know, you can't spend too long fiddling around. It's going to get out of hand. It's going to be a confusing, frustrating experience instead of kind of fun. I would say that the best practice for the live service game then is the same as that for printers, minimizing their use. However, this is one where there at least is the pretense of a pleasant experience, where should you not go too deep, it could be a bumpy but satisfying ride, a very quick jaunt to the local entertainment center. Whereas a printer, I mean, only when absolutely necessary. So it's unfortunate that they are often more necessary. You know, you have to print things now and again. But live service games, yeah, you know, proceed with caution, but proceed. Certainly, why not? And often, again, being that the horse is on your side, wants to have fun, misguided or corrupted though that desire may be, well, it means that you can at least approach for free most of the time. But there's usually some kind of comeuppance later. So just keep your wits about you. I feel that we've armed you very well for experiencing horse culture in the 21st century. You know, for a lot of these, again, it's great because they don't have much progression to them. You know, they've been this way for a long time. You learn now, you're good for a long time. I gave some not so hot recommendations. You know, maybe the variants of the hand mixer that are less powerful are just inferior, simply inferior. If you don't make your foamed pouring milk latte with a hand mixer, I just don't understand what you're going, like what product are you chasing? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. The biggest bubbles, this is the biggest flavor, is how that works. That's right. And so, yeah, I just can't recommend using anything else to mix any substance, actually, rather than a hand mixer. Sewing machines, again, it goes without saying, we all know how qualified PistilWhip and I and the rest of the audience are with sewing machines. Experts all, I'm sure. And so there's no need to elaborate too much further, just to note that they do eat the thread and the clothing, and so you need to be careful. Yeah, and then a special note for live service games. Might be surprising you, but a recommendation in some ways. To proceed with caution, but to proceed. But to view printers as really the fully committed evil version of the noble stallions that we otherwise discussed during this parlay. I hope that this advice has armed you with knowledge. Be safe out there. Remember, a firm hand, some confidence, but they'll act up if they don't respect you. Is that what? Yeah, yes, it was a perfect summary. You know, couldn't have said it better myself. If you'd like to get your own parlay like this one, we'd love to have you. Be about whatever you like. It might be a meme that I saw in a stupor in college with a hand mixer that I actually own. What a delightful local experience. And as you were able to see, I knew exactly what I wanted to say immediately. And that is, of course, how Parley works. It's my responses on the spot. Fortunately for this one, it goes without saying, very easy. And I knew because I know the most about this topic compared to other topics. And so it's okay if it's not like that. It can be something that is weirder to me. That's perfectly fine. Looking forward to it. And looking forward to the next one, PistilWhip.